this video, I'm going to teach you how to answer the most common questions that Sprouts farmers markets ask in their interview, and I'm going to help you plan fantastic answers that will get you a job working there. So let's start with a question that comes up in every Sprouts interview, and that is simply, what times could you work at Sprouts? And they're very interested in this answer, and if you don't meet the business needs, then you're not going to get the job. They want someone that's going to be available at the times that they need staffing. So make sure you're saying things that are going to get them interested. When you're answering this question, the tips that you need to be keeping in mind are that you want to say yes to as much as possible. Every time you say no to something, your chance of getting the job goes down. You want to be as open-minded as possible, so when they suggest various times, you want to try and be open to those and work with the company to schedule your time so that you can be available at those times. Also, when you're giving your answer, show off as much flexibility as possible. You want to say, I'm happy to work these times and these times and these times. The more ands and the more yeses that you say, the higher you will score on this answer and the more interested they will be in giving you the job. The way that people absolutely mess up the question is they start by saying the times that they can't work and then say, I can do the other times. That's not a very helpful way to answer it, and it causes them to question your commitment. You want to demonstrate commitment to your job by placing your job very high in your list of priorities and not giving a list of reasons why you can't work a range of times. The other great thing to do to make your answer much stronger is to include some things that they really do like to hear. A good phrase, if you have very high availability, is simply to say that you're available for shifts anytime from opening to closing time. So basically that says to them, anytime the store's open, you are happy to consider taking shifts at those times. That's a really great phrase to use if you can. You can also mention evenings and weekends. You shouldn't always be scheduled at these times, but you're saying that you're open to these at a reasonable level. That's implied. You don't have to say that specifically. If you're open to overtime, mention that. Chances are you're probably not going to be expected to do overtime, and you should be scheduled to work the hours that you're supposed to work. However, if you're happy to do it, just mention it. It's another good thing to mention. Likewise, you can say that you can work at short notice. Hopefully you won't be expected to work at short notice, but you can always mention that as something that you would be willing to do, and it shouldn't happen, but just mention it anyway. If you have no childcare commitments, you can also mention school and public holidays. If, however, any of those things on the list are times that you would ideally not want to work, don't volunteer that. You don't want to immediately volunteer all the times that you can't work. Only enter into a discussion if it is brought up in the interview, and then you want to try and show off as much flexibility as you can and work with them constructively to come up with a solution to that. So hopefully this slide is helpful to you, and this shows you how you can pass this question. Do not go into a list of the times that you can't work. That's very negative, and that is how people fail the question. Stick to what's on here and you will pass that interview question. The next one you absolutely have to be prepared for is the question about, what can you tell me about Sprouts? Obviously, if you go to your interview having not researched Sprouts, you're not going to do very well. You want to be prepared to talk about the company. If they ask you about the company, you need to know your stuff. Otherwise, that's going to look really, really bad. So a good way to massively increase your chance of getting the job is to go to the interview knowing a lot about the company and bring up all these facts that you've learned throughout your interview. It shows you've done your preparation, and it shows you're someone that takes your job seriously. So the way you approach this question is you start by saying the obvious things. Show that you know the obvious things that everyone should know about the company. Then say a few things that only a few people might know about the company, and then drop in some facts that only very few people would know. Only the people that have really done their research or are inside the company. If you can teach the manager something new that they didn't even know about the company during the interview, that will be really strong in helping you get the job. So let's look at the key facts that you need to talk about. So I would start by talking about fundamentally what Sprouts sells. They are focused on natural and organic foods. They appeal to the demographic that wants that sort of thing, that are very environmentally conscious, and that they care very much about quality, and they're interested in organic foods. The other key thing that the company is trying to deliver is they want to deliver healthy foods, but at an affordable price. They want people to be able to afford to have healthy food. That is really their business model. The company was founded in either 1943 or 2002, depending on how you look at it. So the original starting point of the company was in 1943, where it started as a fresh juice stand, which grew progressively into farmers markets, and then it grew into a store. And then by 2002, it reached its current incarnation as the Sprouts Farmers Markets that you now recognize. It was founded by Henry Bonney, and over time it expanded into Bonney's Market with the help of his sons. The company is headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona. That's a fact that you should know. You should also be aware of the fact that the company was listed numerous times on Fortune magazine's list of the world's most admired companies. That's a really great achievement. You should be aware of their commitments to sustainability and social responsibility. And if you look on the Sprouts website, you can find out about all the things that they're doing with regards to corporate social responsibility, also known as CSR. You can research that, research what your store is doing for the community, the one that you're applying, and discuss that really positively and enthusiastically in your interview. You should also be aware of the fact that they have the Healthy Communities Foundation, which is one of the key things that they do along the lines of corporate social responsibility. And also they're now providing online shopping, and you can get pickup in store of your order that you place online. My top tip for being super prepared and really up to date is to go onto the Sprouts website, read the annual report, and also they put out presentations to investors that talk about their priorities and how they're performing. And if you've read those and mention the fact that you've read those at your interview, that is going to be really impressive. So let's move on and look at the next question, which is, why do you want to join Sprout? This is another question where you need a strong answer. You need to go prepared to answer this. Even if you're not asked this question, you can also talk about it and bring it up in your interview and explain why you want to join the company. So definitely bullet point this one out. Make sure you've planned it. And I'm not going to tell you exactly what to say word for word, because this has got to be about you. This is why you want to work for Sprouts. But what I am going to do is show you what a good answer looks like and what a bad answer looks like. So things you should say, things you shouldn't say, and then some inspiration of things to mention that will help you create a brilliant answer. So firstly, you want to talk about what would you enjoy about working at Sprouts? Why would you really enjoy working here? Because if you enjoy working there, then that suggests you're probably going to be better at your job. People who enjoy their job are better at it and are happier, and that's going to come through and help Sprouts deliver good customer service. The other thing you want to think about is, why do you want to work in grocery? Again, link it to why you would enjoy it. Do you like working with food? Do you like working with people? Do you really believe in organic food and the mission that Sprouts is on? Do you want a job that is recession resistant to a large extent and that plays a really key role within the community? People need their local grocery store. And also talk about career opportunities. There is a great long-term career available. You could start working on the shop floor and work your way up to being a manager, or join corporate and be really quite senior and have a wonderful long-term career if you work very hard. And also talk about your personal interests. If you're interested in the same sort of things that Sprouts is interested in around organic food, natural food, that sort of thing, talk about it. If you have experience as a customer, if you've shopped at Sprouts for a long time, if you really like the brand, talk about your love of the brand. That's what we mean by brand affinity, and talk about how your personal vision is aligned with the company's. If you are, of course, really interested in the same sort of thing, so that's your organic food and your natural sourcing and those things that we talked about earlier to do with the social responsibility and the healthy eating, talk about that as well. And most importantly, when you're talking about why you want to work for the company, show some enthusiasm. If you're not enthusiastic about it, your answer will be a lot weaker. Some bad things that you absolutely should not mention at all is saying, I live very near your store, meaning that you only want to work here because it's easy and convenient for you. That's not going to, and it's going to put them off. If you talk about you just want to get a job to earn some money, well, that's not very interesting to them. Everybody wants to do that. If you give the idea that you want to join Sprouts for a few months, but you're going to leave very quickly and you just wait until something better comes along, well, they're just going to employ someone else because you're just going to be someone that's going to leave very quickly. You've told them that in your interview. If you mention leaving in your interview, that is very silly. The wrong time to talk about leaving a job is before you've even been offered it, because you're not going to get offered it. The other thing is, anything that's irrelevant to Sprouts, just don't bring it up. It's not going to help you, and at worst, it's going to harm you. Some inspiration of some things to mention. Definitely talk about the love of the Sprouts brand. Career opportunities. I researched this roughly. The most recent statistic is that 28% of new joiners were promoted within the company. Talk about this being a long-term career and where you see yourself in 5 years moving into a grocery management role with Sprouts. Talk about enjoying customer service. shared vision and values, the fact that Sprouts is a growing business, so there's opportunities to grow with the company. And if you've been referred, so someone within the company suggested you apply, and you know someone that works there, without even mentioning by name, you can talk about what they love about the company and how they got you interested and share in their enthusiasm. So here's how you plan a great answer to the why do you want to join Sprouts question. Make sure you plan this one out. It is a question that's highly likely to come up, and you're also going to want to discuss these things in your interview, so definitely be prepared. So let's move on and look at the next question, which is how would you deal with a disagreement with a team member? Fortunately, this question is actually quite easy to answer, and you do it by talking about 5 different things. And if you mention these 5 phrases, you will succeed in this question. So the first thing you immediately start by saying when you're presented with this question is emphasize that I always maintain good relationships with those that I work with. It is extremely important to me to always keep those good working relationships. And when there's a disagreement and I'm disagreeing with someone else, or we have some sort of disagreement about how something should be done, the most important thing is to make sure that you always have good relationships with your colleagues. The next thing, you just simply say that I maintain my professionalism at all times, and professionalism is very, very important to me. Even in the case of a disagreement, my professionalism comes first. The next thing you say that during a disagreement, it's very important to have good communication with team members, and that you're always open-minded, that, you know, maybe you're wrong, maybe the other person disagrees with you, but actually they're right. And you have to be open and willing to say, I was wrong about that. Actually, I agree with you now. So make sure that you mention the fact that you're an open-minded person. The next thing you want to say is I'm always solution-focused. I don't want to have disagreements with anyone. I want to solve these problems, and always, always, always mention lastly that you're customer-centric, that you are always thinking about the customer, and that the customer is going to be best served by having great relationships and strong professional teams that work well together. And that is the most important thing. So get those 5 ideas in, and you will simply ace this question. These are all the phrases that they want to hear. Get those in and you'll do great. Right, last question before we go on to some great questions that you could ask them at the end of your interview is about your employment history. Can you tell me about your employment history? And people always answer this question really bad and in a random order and don't get the full benefit. So there is a way to answer this that helps them see that you're the right hire and gets the most out of your previous experience. So when you're answering this, follow a simple procedure, right? And also make sure you get in some key ideas. So you want to show that you've got a skills match. You want to show that there's no negatives. And if you can do that, that's going to suggest that you are a great hire. So let's talk about the procedure that I mentioned. So firstly, say your job title. Second, talk about your roles and responsibilities. So what did you actually do in that job and what were you responsible for? That's the next thing that you need to mention. You want to say a good reason for leaving if you have one. If not, I would just not mention it, because anything that's going to harm you is not something that you volunteer. And then the most important thing, the thing that people always forget to do, is explain how it is relevant to Sprouts. So what did you do in the past? How is this going to help you be better at your job? And literally anything that's involved with working with customers could be linked to success at Sprouts. So for each job, simply say the job title, what your role was and your responsibilities. If you've got a good reason for leaving, like you moved for a promotion or you were relocating to a different area, things like that, definitely mention that. Or if the company went bust, that's nothing to do with you, you couldn't control that. So a good reason for leaving can be really reassuring. They don't want to hear any of these bad reasons, and that's the negative that sometimes they're looking out for. And some good tips for success is link to Sprouts needs. What do they need as a business? They need people that are hardworking, that are passionate about their mission, and that have customer service experience. Emphasize your strengths. What skills did you learn while working in those jobs? Reassure in your exits. Make sure you can explain why you left each job and have a good reason. And really show off your experience. Sell yourself on this. Show that you have a wide variety of great experience and skills that you developed over these roles and will make you much better at this job. And finally, before we finish, here's some great questions that you can ask at the end of your interview. Definitely start by saying that you're really interested in the role, you're eager to know what happens next, and so ask about the next steps in the hiring process. You could ask them what they most like about working at Sprouts and share in their enthusiasm for their job and talk about the fact that you would enjoy those things as well. You could also ask what you can do now to be super well prepared for starting, show that you actually care about your job and you care about being really good at the job, so you're willing to actually do stuff before you even start and engage in a training process before even going in for day one. That is a really positive thing to ask. You can also ask how they would characterize the ideal Sprouts employee, and then you can go back over some of your answers and link your skills and experience to what they are actually looking for. And lastly, you have to make up one question on the day to show that you're engaging in a two-way conversation, you're listening, and you're really interested in what they are saying to you. So make one up on the day as they're talking, be listening carefully, think one up, and ask that at the end. So I hope that this video has been really helpful to you. I wish you the very best of luck in your Sprouts interview. And if you post below what questions they asked you and your experiences, that will also be really helpful to everyone else. And finally, thank you very much for watching.